Okay, here's a good one. This is Arlene and I with Charles E. Smith and Leah Smith. So these are Arlene's parents, and the founder of the Charles E. Smith Companies, and a very wonderful human being. And here's us at a early, that's a good picture. Okay, here's an early picture of the group. Arlene and Bob and children, Leslie, Lauren, and Stuart. I don't know if I have a date on this, I don't, but it was more than a couple weeks ago.
So Bob, I think many people who are inspired by you and what you and Arlene have built think of you as a very wealthy benefactor. You weren't always wealthy, and I think you were involved in community and charitable work even early on in your career. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I've always had an understanding or interest in community and being part of it. So that when my partner and I were building houses, and I was 25 years old, is when we made our first contribution to Federation.
Wow.
We contributed $300 to Federation and at that time, and that was the beginning, and have done every year since. And fortunately, the numbers have grown also.
Yes, they have. Business and family are intertwined. Your partnership with Bob Smith, you had many family members involved in the business. You continue to be actively involved in the business through your life. You also have a very strong commitment to your own nuclear family, and I'd love you to talk about that and how you balanced driving a business that needed a lot of attention with raising three wonderful children.
Well, as you say, we have three wonderful children who are now adults. And we brought them up and we taught them that they had options. And then they left town, exercised the options. We said, what happened? In any event, they each went to where they were happy, and we were delighted to reinforce that. And as we say, we maintain very close contact.
I love that. I'm taking notes on the family side too. So let's shift to philanthropy, because I think very few people have been as intentional and strategic about their philanthropy over an extended period of time as you and Arlene have, and Bob and Clarice Smith have. You haven't just been responding to requests, which many of us do. You've been involved with organizations in conceptualizing them, building them, and sustaining them, and taking them to whole new places. I'm thinking of, Hartman Institute, for example. I'm thinking of what you did at the National Gallery with that extraordinary courtyard. Can you talk about the origins of that, your philanthropic vision, where that came from, and how that ties to your personal values?
Well, I think, first of all, I grew up with certain knowledge, involvement, family involvement in philanthropy. My parents did not have the same means, but at the same time always gave to different charitable causes. And then when Arlene and I had disposable income, it was apparent to both of us that we shared the interest. And I don't call it giving back, I call it investing back in community. So then it's a question of, if you have a certain amount of disposable income, how much you choose to invest back in community. And then it's a matter of, okay, what choices do you make? And so what we've then done is we said, look, we're members of different communities. We're members of the Washington community, members of the American community, members of the Jewish community, and with the rebirth of the State of Israel at this time, it became particularly significant, so that we should be, when given the opportunity, participate in the different communities. So what we've tried to do is balance and say, okay, you give to all of these different ones, and just a matter of determining the priorities, but try to be represented, and recognition that you've been fortunate and that you want to share in that good fortune. So we've been lucky.
I think of it as an impressionist painting. There are a lot of dots, and when you take a step back, it makes you can't focus on one of the dots of the painting. You have to take a step back and see it in its totality to appreciate the beauty of what you and Arlene have done.
That's a very good way of looking at it. It's true.
So let's talk about the Jewish community in Washington, which you've lived through really the creation and dramatic changes in the Jewish community in Washington. 60 years ago was a very different kind of community, 70 years ago. Can you talk about those early days? I mean, I remember my father talking about when something needed to happen in the Jewish community. It was often Charles E. Smith who would, make 6 calls and gather a meeting at his office, and 80% of the money for that project was raised in one meeting.
Well, prior to World War II, Washington, D.C. was relatively small, numbered in the hundreds of thousands. And then when World War II came, and then after that, it grew to the point we're now in the millions. Now, that same growth, exponential growth, occurred in the Jewish community, both number of people and number of opportunities. So you and I are fortunate to have lived during that time. Being part of community became a very natural thing. It became something that is fairly basic, just as we are in other parts of our life. And so, again, we're fortunate, and it's a matter of seeing that, attempted to act it out.
You and Arlene have managed to be, titans in many areas. Arlene is not sitting with us today, but she is very much a part of this story.
Well, Arlene and I have continued to have a very close marriage in which we share a great deal. So whereas we're talking about things I've done, she has been very much a part of it. And she should be given equal credit with me. Her interest in theater led us to play a meaningful part in the arena stage. And we like each other.
I know you do. It's a wonderful partnership, and I do want to say your wife is an extraordinary example of selfless devotion to family and to our community. I mean, she is a very important part of your story on all facets of your life. So I think it's important to
agree, but thank you.
I know she's probably cringing over there, but I think it's important to say. You have a lifetime of lessons that you've learned and wisdom that you've accumulated. What would you advise someone who's in their 20s and their 30s and trying to make their own way and make their mark on the world?
To know thyself. Always, the first thing is to learn who you are and come to terms with it. Be comfortable with it. If not, try and make changes, because you're going to have to live with yourself for hopefully a large number of years.
Lisa and I have spent a lot of time thinking with intentionality about people we see as great models of balance and focus on business, their personal pursuits, community, focus on family. And I just want to say, you and Arlene have just been exemplars on all of those areas and in living a life of purpose, balance, compassion, and hope. Even when facing great challenges, I've always thought of you as someone who sees the potential and the hope, and that is a huge inspiration to Lisa and to me, and I know to many others in our community. So thank you both.
Thank you, Josh. That was an ultimate compliment, and I thank you.